Richards is up. Oh, I missed him. Richards looking for the Steven kick. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, there's Raven. Raven. Oh, Raven. You gotta be kidding me. Crash Holly. Crash Holly. Look at this! Steven Richards!
Hardcore wrestler.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, I'm the Infuso. And if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out. Which was also pretty much the feeling about WWE during the Attitude Era. I mean, it wasn't called must-see TV for nothing. If you didn't tune in or you forgot to put your VHS in to record, you could be missing out on a huge heel turn, a fresh new debut, or Stone Cold driving one of many, many vehicles to the ring. I don't know why that was such a big thing in the 90s, but it was. Or you could be missing a title change hands 10 times in one night. No hyperbole, that's the thing that happened once. This title being the Hardcore Championship. But before I get into that, I have to take you all the way back to the early 90s. A time when a top-tier mid-carder was headed to the main event in his quest to become the WWE Champion. And that man's name was Mr. Perfect. And that champion being Hulk Hogan. Well, rather than actually win the title himself, Mr. Perfect and his manager/partner in crime, the Genius, took it upon themselves to rob Hogan of his belt and completely destroy it. Now, it is considered an urban legend, but the rumor has it that that championship would make its way out of WWE's damaged goods department and back onto WWE TV. During 1998, Mick Foley would do the unthinkable. He'd turn heel. Yeah, that's right, the jolly plaid-wearing everyman that some younger wrestling fans may just know as Saint Mick, or Stephanie McMahon's bitch, was a heel. His childlike nature was exploited and manipulated by the boss, and no, not Sasha Banks, Vince McMahon. And in order to demonstrate his false affection for his employee, he awarded him with this piece of junk that we now know as the WWE Hardcore Championship, and declared mankind the first ever champion. Now, one look at this title would tell you, this clearly wasn't as prestigious as, say, the WWE Championship, or the Intercontinental Championship, or even the European or Light Heavyweight Championships. And let's just be honest with each other, it weren't really prestigious. People didn't want them. People didn't really want them. They didn't care for them. As a matter of fact, this wasn't even really seen as a legitimate title so much as a spectacle. The title changed hands a few times, including once where the British Bulldog literally just handed it over to Al Snow because even in the downswing of his career, he wanted no part of that shit. No pun intended, sorry. To bring this back up, sorry. It also included Road Dogg vacating it after being attacked backstage. And of course, it was a major focal point in the legendary feud between the Big Boss Man and Al Snow. You know, the feud that included Al Snow losing head and instead finding the company of Pepper the Chihuahua. A feud that would see that same Chihuahua killed and served unknowingly to its owner. You know, maybe the Attitude Era wasn't always so great. I'm just realizing that. I'm just saying this out loud. I'm thinking maybe I had my nostalgia goggles on for this. That feud would lead to the one-of-a-kind, and I mean literally one-of-a-kind, they would never do this again. It was too stupid the first time. Kennel from Hell match. You see, it was a cage within a cage, with humping dogs surrounding the ring, because of course it was. Well, eventually that title would fall onto the lap of Crash Holly in February of 2000. And that's when he made history and gave a title a gimmick. He proclaimed that the title would now be contested under 24/7 rules, meaning that he'd defend his title 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not only in the ring, but any and everywhere else, so long as that there was a referee and camera crew present. And this took off pretty quickly, as the title's new premise added a layer of comedy fodder for a show that at the time had something in it for almost everyone. And don't get me wrong, by no means did this legitimize the title as a serious prize, but it did provide entertainment for fans worldwide as it became the division where anything could happen, anywhere. The title's new stipulation gave the show great segments, including Crash Holly defending his belt from the Headbangers in an amusement park.
Hardcore wrestler, hardcore wrestler, hardcore wrestler, hardcore wrestler, hardcore wrestler, hardcore wrestler.
And and just barely getting away from the former tag team champions. Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe trying to pin Crash Holly in his sleep. Hardcore Holly and Al Snow fighting in a polluted lake, which, you know, is sad, alright? You shouldn't do that to these guys. That's exactly how you catch ligma. A segment at WrestleMania 18 that saw Spike Dudley, the Hurricane, Mighty Molly, and Christian all winning the title before Maven, its original champion, regained the piece of shit prize by the end of the show. Several battle royals for the belt, which saw the match crown multiple champions, which was obviously the precursor for the short-lived WWE Champion Scramble match. Remember those? Yeah, I don't want to either. It also added a crutch to the company. For workers who were lacking in substance or style, this was the division for them. As even if they were allergic to talent, they'd probably know how to hit each other with garbage cans and steel chairs. I mean, it doesn't really take that much, talent or effort. Why did you hire those guys? It was essentially the creative doesn't have anything for you division, but it managed to be a memorable part of many wrestling fans' childhood. While the title definitely wasn't taken seriously, nor should it have been, it was defended and obtained quite often. The Hardcore title changed hands almost as many times as the WCW Heavyweight title changed hands in the year 2000. And that's a lot. And just to give you an idea of what the caliber of these champions were, here's a short list I composed of some of the people who have won this belt. Pete Gas of the Mean Street Posse, Rodney of the Mean Street Posse, Joey Abs of the Mean Street Posse. I could end the list there, but I have more. Thrasher of the Headbangers, Godfather's Hoe. Not kidding, that's even what she's credited as, just Godfather's Hoe. An elderly Gerald Briscoe. Twice. An elderly Pat Patterson. R-Truth during his first forgettable run with the company. SK Quick. Sean Stasiak. Nuff said. Terry Runnels. Relic, which was killer, spelled backwards, by the way. Don't know if you knew that. And that's not including some of the more bizarre challengers for this title, one of which being a referee. Like I said, this wasn't exactly the workhorse title. But that's not to say that there weren't champions who had a good run with the belt. I mean, Crash Holly's probably the most remembered for holding it, desperately defending it and dodging danger at any and all costs. Raven's tenure with the company is probably exclusively remembered by his time spent as a 27th hardcore champion. The most out of anybody, because creative never had anything for him. Undertaker, during his biker phase, carried the belt around his neck, and despite the fact that the 24/7 rule was intact, the roster had been so afraid of the dead man, they didn't even attempt to cash in on that clause. Mankind, being the inaugural champion, is remembered for his time with the title, despite never challenging for the belt following his loss. He's kind of moved on. As well he should have. Rob Van Dam, playing off his time in ECW, which was seen as strictly hardcore wrestling at the time, won the title multiple times and was even its last winner, combining it with the Intercontinental Championship. Steve Blackman's only notable title win came from a feud with Shane McMahon over the strap, leading to a series of very interesting matches, some of the best the title ever saw. Al Snow, Big Boss Man, and Hardcore Holly were all synonymous with this busted belt, and both pre-JBL Bradshaw and Tommy Dreamer had their own custom versions of it. And let's just say that neither design is exactly, it's not exactly the rated R spinner or Stone Cold Smoking Skull belt. Outside of the incredible segments the title set up and created, the matches for this belt were usually lacking in quality. And that's because they were mostly piss-poor brawls or heavy-handed weapon assaults. That being said, it wasn't without some standout performances. As previously mentioned, the boss's son, and best in the world, no seriously, he won the cup, it's official now, Shane McMahon, and the Lethal Weapon and least charismatic man on earth, Steve Blackman, always put on good performances. Undertaker and RVD competed for the belt in such a way that for a brief moment in time it almost increased the belt's value. But not really, because look at it. They contested a good back and forth, the likes of which the division didn't typically see. Road Dogg and Al Snow on a throwaway Raw actually contested what may be one of the greatest matches of both of their careers. The Big Show, Kurt Angle, and The Rock, if you could believe that, all once competed for the belt. Why any of them would want it is beyond me, but hey, it happened. And of course, knowing that the 24/7 rule was on the belt, this obviously didn't stay a triple threat for too long. But hey, variety is the spice of life. I don't know, some shit like that. Is that how it goes? The interferences only further added to the match. Big Show would also go on to compete in what I think is the greatest hardcore championship match of all time, in another triple threat match against Kane and Raven at WrestleMania 17. Or X7 if you're super edgy. They battled around the whole arena, almost accidentally shutting the show down because Raven drove over a wire with a golf cart. The three put each other through hell, beating each other with every weapon in sight, and throwing each other through every wall, door, and window they could find. As time went on, the title lost its edge when the 24/7 rule was actually revoked, making it just any other belt just minus, any of the value and its own intrigue. And that just goes to show you that it's hard to make a title that literally looks like a piece of trash to be seen as anything other than a piece of trash. As stated before, the title would go on to be incorporated into the IC title after a match between RVD and Jeff Hardy. So, not exactly the worst way to go out. Why you'd want its lineage to taint the Intercontinentals is beyond me, but, sure, do you. You do you. I'm not going to complain. Except to the internet. Of course, since the concept took off in WWE, a little while after the title's introduction, its competitor, WCW, decided to issue their own hardcore title. And much like WWE's division, was contested over very similar rules, except to not nearly as much fanfare. The matches weren't as entertaining as the WWE hardcore matches, and it seemed too on the nose for what they were trying to duplicate. Using Norman Smiley as their surrogate Crash Holly for the division was actually a good choice. However, pairing him with Ralph was not a good choice. It was bad. Why do you do this? An Eric Bischoff title win did little to win over the fans, but at least the division gave us the moment of BoJack Horseman kicking the shit out of Terry Funk. Look at that, poor guy's probably donkey-brained now. After the title was retired in 2002, it returned to the show in 2003, when Stone Cold Steve Austin, then authority figure, fucking sell out, awarded the belt to its first owner, Mick Foley, as a trophy for his dedication to hardcore wrestling. 3 years after that, Foley would bring the title back when he turned heel again, surprisingly, with Edge, proclaiming that he and Edge were both co-holders of the Hardcore Championship. This, however, was never acknowledged on air, and Edge was never recognized as Hardcore Champion, and the story ultimately just dropped and forgotten. And despite them bringing the title out with them less than a handful of times, it was never defended. And that was the Hardcore Championship. For all its faults, you can't argue that it made a star out of a few. It gave guys who would have otherwise not been on the card or not given that much screen time something to do. It provided much needed comedy relief to the program, and it gave fans something to talk about, and made for an unpredictable atmosphere every week on Raw, SmackDown, and even on house shows. It may not appeal to the side of the audience focused on the wrestling side of the product, but it sure as hell did its job on the entertainment side of things. So with that being said, I'm Infuso, and if you like the words that came out of my mouth hole, don't forget to like and subscribe.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bad time. Same bad channel.